Hey everybody, just kind of rolling out of bed to make this video. It's like 6:30 in the morning and I have to rush it. But I was inspired because I saw some other people doing kind of like threads to this kind of video that was definitely started this time by Steve, who's FlipsideCT. And he said that he was inspired to do this video by going to a record show and seeing a lot of young people that were just probably getting into vinyl, buying basically common stuff that you'd expect, you know, the typical common albums by the Beatles, the Stones, the Who, Zeppelin, you know, and he got the idea to make a video where you show some under-the-radar albums that maybe you don't always hear out there, things you don't see every day, and people aren't all buying the same thing all the time. I thought that was a good idea, so I grabbed a bunch of records that I thought would qualify for that type of video, and here they are right now. So, okay, I'm going to start out with, as long as I put this down here, this album by The Shadows. Okay, now I recently got a Shadows collection and I sold it, but I kept this particular record, and the reason I kept this one was because it was autographed on the back, to tell you the truth. I like The Shadows, but I just had to make some quick cash, and that's why I sold them. But anyway, I have this. I still like The Shadows, and I'm sure I'll be getting some of the records back. The Shadows are like the Ventures. I call them the British Ventures. I mean, they do a lot of kind of surf rock music, guitar-driven. Hank Marvin is on guitar, lead guitar, really good, great guitar player. And you don't hear The Shadows every day. So this is not so much the album, but the group, The Shadows, I recommend. Okay, for young people out there that want to hear rock and roll from the 70s, I have this album here, the first album by the Runaways. That's Joan Jett's original band. And their debut album here, with Sherry Curry doing most of the vocals. This is probably one of their best albums, you know, so I recommend this, the first album by the Runaways. There's Joan Jett right there. Okay, now we all know the group the Monkees. Those albums are pretty common, but I actually was listening to this album by Michael Nesmith, who's from the Monkees, Infinite Rider on the Big Dogma. This is a pretty interesting album by Mike Nesmith. I don't think people show that much or talk about that much. And I think this is worth a listen. Something really different. Okay, back to talking about rock, and I would go to the 60s. There's this group that not many people talked about. This is the Seeds. And the Seeds, these are the Seeds, I guess you would say. And they have a big hit called Pushing Too Hard, which is a really, really great 60s rock driving song. And I spun this album, I think, one time when I first got it. I remember thinking it was more of the same and kind of enjoyable. So I have to recommend this. This is good hard rock if you want to hear some 60s stuff that's unusual. And you won't be disappointed by that hit song, Pushing Too Hard. Okay, we talked a little while ago about the Runaways and Joan Jett. Well, here's an album by Suzi Quatro. Suzi Quatro is kind of the Joan Jett's influence. You can see the leather and the shag haircut and all that. This is a good album called Rock Hard. And she's got a bunch of decent albums, but this one is one that I don't hear mentioned that often. So I recommend this one if you like Joan Jett type stuff. I'm going to go to the 1980s. 1980s, a group called Scandal that had a really big hit with a song called Goodbye to You. But this is an album. It's more like an EP, really. It has only 5 songs on it. But there's some good tunes on here besides Goodbye to You. A song called Love's Got a Line on You is good, and Another Bad Love. You know, so this is a group that I discovered. I remember when I heard of them first in 1983, nobody had really been talking about them. So, okay. Mixed reactions are going to be with this one, but bear with me. I have a Yoko Ono album here. Now, Yoko Ono, this is a double album that came out in 1971 at the same time John Lennon's Imagine album came out. This particular album is called Fly, and I think there's some of Yoko's best material on here ever. and it's not screaming and yelling and carrying on and making a lot of noise, but it's very, very, I don't know what you want to call it, ahead of its time, I think. You know, new wavy in spots and funky. I know I played some of this for my nephew, who was over here one day. We were having a listening party here one time years ago, and I played a couple of tracks, and he was blown away. He thought it really was amazing. You know, the instrumentation too on it. So if you're gonna pick a Yoko album, try that one. Okay, back to the 60s. This is a group called the Rockefellers. And the Rockefellers consisted of a Filipino-American family. They were all brothers and their dad. And they had a hit here with a song called Killer Joe. But this is really them doing a lot of, you know, cover songs, stuff like Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear, Elvis song, you know, Runaway, the Del Shannon song, Twist and Shout, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, that the Shirelles did. And I have to tell you, I really got a kick out of this album, and I enjoyed it. I don't expect every kid to run out there and buy this, but just to show something unusual, I figured, you know, I wouldn't recommend that to be a first pick. Now, of course, Elvis Presley is very popular. It's very mainstream Elvis, but I decided to show this album because it's an album that not everybody talks about. It's from Elvis in Memphis, and this is a country-flavored album that was produced by the famous producer Chips Moman, and it took Elvis out of his usual surroundings, where he was used to making music for RCA, and we got a different flavor here because this is very excited Elvis and thrilled Elvis, because he's actually excited to stop making the movies. He was making a lot of movie soundtracks at the time, silly movie songs, and he got back into making a really good studio album. I got turned on to this album by Ed of the King's Court channel, and I don't regret it. I thank him so much for turning me on to this album. It's something different from Elvis. It's not the usual hits, and it's really Elvis coming into respectability again after all those silly movie soundtracks. Okay, I got some real oldies here. This is Buddy Holly, The Chirping Crickets. You know, this is probably one of his best albums. Well, actually, you know, there's been a lot of albums that came out after his death, but this one here, really good early Buddy Holly, Chirping Crickets. And we lost Buddy Holly in the plane crash in 1959, but we also lost Ritchie Valens, and this is like a debut kind of album for Ritchie Valens. A lot of good stuff here. You have Donna, the song La Bamba, let everybody know, Come On, Let's Go. He does Boney Maroney, a song called Ooh My Head, which is fun. This is a real good early 50s rock album, and aside from, you'll know a few songs here by Ritchie Valens that he was famous for, but if you want to try 50s rock, if you like 50s rock or you want to try some, this is one of the best places to start. Along those lines, if you like great guitar players, I recommend this album, Bo Diddley's A Twister. So Bo Diddley, all his albums have interesting guitar playing on them, and this one has his signature song, Bo Diddley, Hey Bo Diddley, on it. So this is why I picked this one out of several that I have in the collection. Okay, well, one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino movies was Kill Bill Volume 1, but also Kill Bill Volume 2. So we got two albums here, Kill Bill 1, Kill Bill 2. And these albums are so nice because you've got so many different songs on here. Tarantino reaches into all kinds of unusual music here. Well, he's got Nancy Sinatra doing Bang Bang. You have stuff like the Isaac Hayes doing Run Fay Run, Al Hurt. You got on here, you got a song called Woohoo by the 5, 6, 7, 8's, an Asian female band. A lot of really like interesting renditions of some certain songs, and the same thing holds true for this particular album here. You got kind of like soundtracks from I think it's maybe The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, other kind of spaghetti westerns on here by I can never pronounce his name. The music tracks by Ennio Morricone. who does a lot of good stuff. You got Johnny Cash doing A Satisfied Mind, which is really cool. And again, just a lot of interesting renditions of certain soundtracks, you know, from westerns, and kind of like modern sounding fun. I don't know how else to word it, but for you younger people out there, you probably know these movies anyway. If you know these movies, you probably already have the soundtrack. But I like the different variety on here that Tarantino plucks out to put in the movies. Anyway, there it is. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope you had some fun with this. And I have to get moving. So see you soon. Thanks.